God.
The shootout at the OK Corral is probably the most famous shootout in all of the Wild West history, and there's been countless films on it over the years. But by the time of the 90s, when Tombstone was actually made, westerns were kind of a thing of the past. They were more of a novelty item at this point. Other than what you had Young Guns in the 80s, which is more of a MTV generation version of a western, but they died out. And a lot of the famous 70s and 80s directors like John Carpenter, they got into movie making because they wanted to make westerns, but by the time they were actually ready to run productions, the western genre was dead in Hollywood. So it's a wonder Tombstone ever really got made. The writer of Tombstone, Kevin Jarre, wrote The Mummy, Rambo 2, and Glory, which got him a nomination for Golden Globe for Best Writer. But he didn't really write that much else. He ended up, after Tombstone, mainly being a script doctor for years, usually uncredited. And it's funny just looking at his career. He wrote very few screenplays, but the ones he did generally were all iconic hits. Tombstone was actually meant to be his directorial debut. The first month of production, he was the director, but he was quickly replaced. He was said to be getting overwhelmed with the production, getting overwhelmed with having to get all the shots done. He was falling wildly behind schedule. When they were looking at the dailies, the producers were realising that the running time of the final film would end up 6 hours if they let him keep shooting it the way he was shooting it. So eventually he was replaced with George Cosmatos, who had previously worked on Rambo 2 and also directed Leviathan, which is sort of a The Thing ripoff, but set in an underwater station set at the bottom of the sea. Good little movie. But what's interesting about this is that Val Kilmer has often claimed that Kurt Russell was the real director on set. And supposedly Kurt Russell killed himself making this movie, filming long days and nights, and then, as everyone else wrapped for shooting, he would go off and be working on the shot list for the next day. Essentially, there was kind of like a understanding that the official director would essentially be a yes man, give some guidance at times, but for all intents and purposes, Kurt Russell was the director of this film.
And it turned out really well, so it kind of begs the question, why did he never go on to direct anything else? It's a very hard project to take up as your first experience. You think you kind of want to get into the waters and test them a little bit with something less grand of a scale, because this, as you said earlier, the production on this is massive. Like the towns, the extras, the sets, the shootouts. He done a fucking fantastic job, Kurt. It's a very good western.
You're absolutely right in that you think you want to start off with a small production, a tight script, couple locations, and a small cast. This movie is epic, like you said, epic runtime as well, epic scale, but also the cast is huge because they're trying to be as authentic as possible. Often with movies based on real events, they'll merge 1, 2, or even 3 characters into one character in order to, not have as many moving parts, have as many characters you need to introduce or cast. Makes it simpler for the audience to digest. But this film isn't interested in that. It tries to tell the story of the OK Corral shootout and the build up to it and the aftermath of it as honestly and accurately as possible.
I see it like a very new western. I've never seen a western of this sort because you have all these characters who have 85 speaking parts. And every actor has built his own character. And
as a result, you get a film that, at times, if you're not a fan of slow movies, maybe even meanders a bit, but if you just approach it that this isn't an all-action shootout every 5 seconds sort of western, then it will just wash over you. Speaking of the cast, it is stellar. We've got Kurt Russell as Wyatt Earp, Val Kilmer as Doc Holiday, Sam Elliott as Virgil Earp, Bill Paxton as Morgan Earp, Powell as Boothe as Curly Bill, Thomas Hayden Church, and Charlton Heston playing Henry Hooker.
What are your thoughts on the pacing? Because with my westerns, I want to see shootouts a lot. That's why I watch westerns. I love the drama of it. I love, a villain versus a maverick, a vigilante in the town, and he's taking everyone down. The cast is very good and the dialogue's very good, but with the pacing, I thought there was some bits where it's like a bit too dialogue-y, and it takes a good long while for the action to really step into place.
A lot of any movie, how you feel about it, is expectations. That's why getting marketing right is so important. And when you get marketing wrong, or if you feel like you've been cheated by the marketing, and you go pay for your movie ticket, get into cinema, sit down, and you get a different film than you were sold, then you're angry about it. And even if it is a good film, you might hate it. If you're expecting an all-action western, you're not going to get it, so you're not going to like it, or you might hold those moments against the film. I knew what I was getting into. I'd seen it years before. The perfect experience of watching a good movie that you've seen before is when you've watched it so long ago, all that you remember is that you liked it, but you remember nothing about it. And the only thing I remembered about this movie was that was the tone, and it wasn't all action. So when I came to watch it again this time, I loved those bits. Those were the bits I preferred. I wasn't waiting for the action to end, but it was not the most memorable parts to me. You know, what makes this movie great is the slow, contemplative moments where you have Wyatt Earp and his brothers who have known each other for decades. Doc Holiday, they've been through so much together. And just their late night musings about thoughts and ideas on things. You know, when they come out of a bar one night and they're going to head on, but the ladies are heading home. And Bill Paxton starts talking about the sky and saying, look at all those stars and God still remembered to make me.
I mean, you look up and you think God made all of that. He still remembered to make a little speck like me. Kind of flattering, really.
Yeah.
And just little moments like that. And you can really see, although this was probably an upsetting thing for the writer because, you know, it's supposed to be his directorial debut. It was a passion project. He was originally writing Dracula for years, which that project fell through. So he started writing Tombstone just of his own accord, you know. And you can see all that love in it. You know, the lines of dialogue are just beautiful. And they don't move the plot along, but they tell you so much about the character and just get you thinking about those sort of things in life that the movie wants you to think about. This is a movie for not an older audience, but it's for, in the seasons of your life, this is the final season. It wants you thinking about that. It wants you thinking from their point of view. They've been friends for a long time. You know, the Old West is starting to become civilized. They're trying to retire, but the uncivilized part of the Old West won't let them. And it's just beautiful. So we meet Wyatt Earp and the other Earp brothers and Doc Holiday for the first time as they're getting off that train with their wives. And it immediately establishes that they've come to this new town. They're retired as lawmen. They don't want to be dragged into that life anymore. And they're coming here just to settle up, use their money, retire, have fun, gamble all night, drink all night, hang out with their wives, chill. And we see straight away one of the local kind of higher up guys in the town kind of approaches him and asks him if he wants to be the new lawman, or doesn't outright say it, but you can see Wyatt Earp knows that's where he's going, and he just makes it clear that I'm retired. Also has a nice moment where someone's kind of mistreating a horse, and he grabs him and stops him, and makes it clear, like, no, don't do that.
Hurts, don't it?
So this establishes that he can't help himself, even in that little moment, but get involved when he thinks someone's mistreating someone else or something wrong is happening. We see over the course of the next couple of sequences that they're settling in town, but there's a local gang that's basically not runs the town, but essentially just torments it.
Yes.
As the gang known as the Cowboys. So the guys are trying to settle into town. They're living the good life now. Doc Holliday's there, he's gambling, and you see what a cocky bastard he is, and he's always kind of looking to torment people. But again, we see quite early on where Wyatt Earp goes up to the local gambling house, and he goes in for a drink, and he's chatting to the barman, and Billy Thornton is in the corner, and you can see he's just a big mouth, he's drunk, he's causing problems, he's yelling at all the other gamblers. The barman kind of says, oh, you know, he drove out all the high rollers because he scared everyone, came in flagging his gun around. And Wyatt Earp, once again, we see he can't help himself. He gets involved. He goes over. It's a great scene. He starts saying, like, just sitting in my chair. And Billy Thornton's character tries to play the big man, and he just puts it on him, calls his bluff, and makes him shit himself.
Listen, mister, I'm getting awful tired of your... I'm getting tired of your gas. Now jerk that pistol and go to work. I said throw down, boy.
It doesn't take Wyatt Earp very long from he's retired off the train to going in the first bar and then acting like the lawman. So it took him like the space of like 5 minutes to like be like, oh, I've retired, but I just can't help myself here.
And that's the thing. That's a lot what this is about, because there is a local sheriff who also appears to be, I don't know, the local mayor or one of the richest guys in town. You see, he meets them early on when they first arrive, and he basically gifts them a house. And you get the feeling where this sheriff, he's a sheriff in name. He knows these guys coming into town and staying here, even if they're retired, like they say they are, is good for the town, because they are the sheriff in spirit. Whether they're technically lawmen or not, they will protect the town. So he clearly wants them to stay, wants them to feel at home.
Yeah, I think Wyatt Earp's reputation precedes himself, because you see him going into like bars and people asking for like his autograph and shit. So I think he's hoping that Wyatt Earp's reputation will be enough for people, for the troublemakers to be scared of him. And I think in real life he did have this reputation, because this film does a very good job on keeping historical accuracy. Because I read when Wyatt Earp died, even though he's got into all these scraps and altercations, these famous scraps, he didn't have as much as one bullet scratch on him, so he never got fucking shot his whole life.
That's
so
amazing.
he must have been brilliant at what he'd done.
Very good.
Yeah.
So after that, the gambling house is doing really good. All the high rollers come back, but you see that this town is semi-lawless. And I just love the way that Old West must have worked, where Wyatt Earp is just casually chatting to the marshal one day, and two lads come out shooting from the bar, I guess, next door, and they shoot one of them dead, and the marshal walks over, kind of, not like shocked, like, wow, I just seen someone die. He's more like, oh, great, I got to fill out, sort out this. Yeah. And the guy casually says, oh, it was a fair fight, Marshal, come on. He's like, nah, sorry, I got to take you in front of the judge. And it's the casualness of it. It just gives you that insight into how brutal life must have been in the frontier West.
I think in real life that again actually happened, but he never got arrested, that guy, because it got put down as an accident.
An accident?
Yeah. So like, it was an accident. He cheated me and I shot him by accident, and they just got away with it. I guess they were just fucking sick of like digging graves constantly. It's just like, oh, this again, like I can't be bothered, so they just leave it.
If people die that regularly,
oh yeah,
people don't have, the court systems are stuff today with dealing with cases. There was no court, there was a judge who was just a dude in the town that probably knew the guy that got shot and would just have to take it as like, it sounds like an accident.
Yeah, it must have been hard, because like now with courts and shit, you've got CCTV and be like, well, you actually done this. Imagine like everyone was fucking pissed out of their heads, and then you're probably in front of the judge and like, oh, who's telling the truth? It must have been even worse. And
with small towns like this, it was probably a popularity contest.
Yeah, exactly.
Most of the time. So while this is playing out, you see Josephine is introduced. She's a performer. She was an interesting character because she's very forthright. Like, she immediately starts saying to her friend when she sees Kurt Russell, like, who is that? Like, she just immediately decides, like, don't care if he's married, I'm gunning for him. And it got me thinking, we have an idea that women thought about sex, and men in this era as well, didn't speak about sex and didn't talk like that and this, that and the other. But how true is that? Because if you think about, like, we see stuff from the 50s of, like, that bullshit wholesome life, and we know it wasn't like that. We know there was guys beating their wives and people cheating and hookers and all this stuff and horrible childhoods. So maybe that was more common to speak. You know, the way we would commonly speak about sex nowadays. Maybe it was more common back then than you'd think.
It'll be like in the 50s, like, let me take you out for a pie or something, and then he'd be like, oh, good God, missed us. And then they'd like faint or like blush.
Oh, damn. You may indeed, if you get lucky.
But yeah, they must have thought about it all the time, especially considering, well, Doc Holliday's got tuberculosis, he's going to die. Everyone's fucking getting shot. Yeah. So, like, you don't know whether you're going to, like, just cross the road getting some, like, groceries and someone shoots you in the head. So,
life's too short to be good.
So it must be like, oh, I really want to fuck her. Do you know what I mean? So I'm going to try it.
And it's interesting as well, because Wyatt Earp has a wife, but she kind of just gets sidelined. It's clearly a loveless marriage. Yeah. And it hints, anyway, in this, that Wyatt Earp is putting effort in, but she just is miserable and doesn't want to know. You get the feeling maybe she's an alcoholic or has some sort of substance abuse problems.
There's a scene in it later on where he comes into the room and she like hides a bottle, which I thought was booze.
I think it was a bottle of morphine.
It was a bottle of morphine, and then Wyatt Earp's like, is that fucking opium that the doctor prescribed? So like everyone was just fucked out of their nuts.
Off their tits.
Yeah. So I think she knows that he's kind of got faraway eyes, and you know, as I said, he's basically a celebrity. So everyone's probably like, oh, is that Wyatt Earp? He's like an early rock star.
How the hell are you?
Wyatt, I am rolling.
Wyatt Earp?
We don't really care about the wife. She becomes less of a character as it goes along. And him and Josephine are going to get together. But we see in the next scene, everyone else knows it as well, because they go out to the gambling house that night, and Doc Holiday kind of like taunts him a little bit, saying, what if she walks in here now? You're going to be all faithful and good? And she walks in and he sees Wyatt Earp does keep his cool, doesn't do anything, lets her go her own way.
I stand corrected, Wyatt. You're an oak.
And that's the perfect description of Wyatt Earp in this film and Kurt Russell's performance. He is oak. Val Kilmer is the maverick, but he's an oak. You know, he's unmoving, stoic, can't be provoked, only does things of his own accord. He is like an old oak tree.
While we're on the subject of Wyatt and Doc, what do you think of the chemistry and the cohesion between the cast?
I mean, in a film with a lot of great things in it, their chemistry is definitely my favourite. It's off the charts, and you see, they were great friends in real life. They were so devoted to trying to flesh out their characters for this film. They ended up moving in together for the months around it because they were spending so much time together anyway. And you just see that on screen. Like, you believe their friendship. You love their friendship. When I think about the movie after I'd watched it the next day, I was thinking about those moments they have together and how great they are. The sad moments and the good moments and the sense of friendship throughout it. And yeah, it was incredible. It was perfect.
Yeah, I think their chemistry was brilliant, and I don't think it could have worked with any other actors playing them. But out of all people, William Dafoe was nearly cast as Doc Holiday. The only reason he didn't get it is because there was so much controversy around him at the time due to his role in Passion of the Christ. So the studio were like, not fucking worth it. Do you know what I mean?
It's funny because I can't think of many William Dafoe performances where I'd ever trade him for anyone. But you will never know because we won't see the movie, but no one but Val Kilmer can play this role.
Yeah.
He's perfect for it. And William Dafoe would have just been different. Who knows if the chemistry would have been the same, because I don't think they were friends in real life. Val Kilmer's fate, he's a beautiful man, and he's at his studliest during this period.
Yeah.
The thing that most personifies, at least Val Kilmer's version of the role, was his swagger. He is the guy with the best lines. He's a dentist, but somehow he's the best shooter in the West. Even Wyatt Earp said he was the best shooter he ever met, and he wasn't even a lawman or a gunslinger. He was just a dentist who got addicted to gambling, and as a result would often get into scuffles and had to learn to shoot and learn to fight. But he was kind of a philosopher as well. A lot of the greatest lines of dialogue come from him in this movie. And again, it's his delivery and his charisma. It's nearly a role that didn't require a great actor like William Dafoe. It required a charisma machine like Val Kilmer.
Don't any of you have the guts to play for blood?
I'm your huckleberry. That's just my game.
He's got a lot of layers to him because he's obviously very fucking intelligent. There's one exchange in it where he starts fucking speaking Latin. There's another where he's just in a bar with his girl playing fucking Frederick Chopin on the piano.
This happens to be a nocturne.
Which?
You know, Frederick fucking Chopin.
This guy, Doc Holiday, could do everything, and I'm jealous of him.
Yeah.
Do you know? He's a fucking dentist, so he could fix your teeth if someone punches it out. He could back you up by killing someone. He could be the life of the party, although not when he's sweating like a fucking rag. Do you know what I mean?
And the balls on the guy.
Balls.
The story of how they met when he was gambling in the back and Wyatt Earp had walked into the bar and confronted about 10 guys who drew their guns on him, and Wyatt Earp was pretty much dead. And Doc Holiday barely knew him at that point, yet pulled his gun out and risked his life to save his life. And it sums up the kind of dude he is, because he is ride or die with all his pals.
It's not your problem, Doc. You don't have to mix up in this.
That is a hell of a thing for you to say to me.
He's an amazing dude.
Yeah, I loved him.
And he'd be an unrealistic character if he wasn't based pretty accurately on a real life person.
Yeah, I'd be like, there's no way that this guy could have existed in real life, man. But he did.
Yeah. I wonder if that inspired the dentist from Django Unchained.
It's probably a good shout,
Yeah. So anyway, later that night when they're in the gambling place, we get one of the first run-ins with the cowboy gang. He gets into a bit of a taunting match with one of them. It's looking like it might lead towards a shootout. And there's this really cool moment where the cowboys are trying to intimidate them with tricks of their guns, and Doc starts mocking them, doing it with his cup. And it kind of lightens the mood, but also it's a way nearly of establishing I'm this good with a gun without having to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And it reminded me kind of how two gorillas are fighting for the right to mate, and sometimes it will be a fight, but sometimes one beating his chest enough is enough to scare the other one off first.
Yeah.
But it's the first warning sign. So then we get to the next big clash. One of the cowboy gangsters are drunk one night and he comes out from a bar and he just starts shooting in random directions. Nowhere in particular, just being a complete idiot.
He actually comes out of a fucking opium den.
Oh really? I didn't realize.
And I was like, yeah, because it's quite stereotypical, because every time I've seen, and From Hell's another good example, an opium den, it's always, they stage it being an opium den with the Chinese guy with a long beard right, he's in an opium den. He comes out, and this wouldn't happen if you was fucking on opium.
That's what I was thinking.
He comes out and he's like, oh, I feel so great. And he's like, bare high, but you'd be lying down on the floor because you're on heroin. He starts just shooting everything. And we've discussed this before, but I think this breaks the camel's back, because what he does is bang out of order, shooting indiscriminately, shot windows, passers by.
Well, you see the marshal comes out to confront him.
Yeah.
And he's kind of an old man. He's not so much a policeman, he's more got the feel of like the security guard in your supermarket. Yeah. Doesn't really have any power, kind of comes over and just says, "Can you not do that?" And he's got that vibe to him. And the cowboy shoots him dead.
Yeah.
I got to think, do you think he did it by accident?
I'll get to that, but this is quite sad, because he's kind of like, he's sitting in a bar next to Wyatt Earp, and everyone's like, well, shouldn't you be doing something because you're the marshal? And he's just letting him, and Wyatt Earp specifically says to him, why don't you let it run its course?
Yeah. Anyway, so Wyatt Earp runs over, knocks his gun out of hand, beats him up, arrests him. He's going to take him in front of the judge. But then the gang shows up.
Turn him loose.
And we get into a tense moment where people are drawing guns on each other. You know, we have that great line of dialogue from Doc Holiday. He pulls a gun on one of the guys and he says, "Oh, you're too drunk to even shoot me. You're seeing two of me." And he pulls out his other gun and says, "I got one for each of you." Brilliant, like, it's just wonderful.
And then Wyatt has his gun to one of their heads. And he goes, well, the other guy in the gang goes, well, there's loads of us. And he goes, well, if you think I'm bluffing, you'll kill me, but I'll kill him. And then the other guy who's got his gun to his head quickly realises, no, boys, this man isn't bluffing. So it's a really cool scene where we see how ballsy Wyatt Earp.
Yeah.
We knew he was, but there's like outnumbered 30-1. Nothing really happens. It's kind of like a Mexican standoff with no actual shooting. But
all Mexicans.
Yeah, they're all Mexicans. It's just a standoff. The cowboys run away with their tails between their legs, and you know that they're such arrogant bastards. They're going to want some form of revenge for this. So it kind of sets everything up nicely, this scene.
At the same time, Virgil, Wyatt Earp's older brother, decides to become a lawman.
Town man, not town.
What the hell are you doing? I told you we weren't getting involved.
You got us involved when you brought us here.
And Wyatt's really disappointed in this. At this point, you understand his reasons, but the other guys know that you're trying to pretend we're not in this situation. We're already in this situation, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Like, we are lawmen. We're the only guys around who are able to do this job. It's got to be us. But Wyatt's still fighting it.
It's kind of like, why didn't you just fucking... Like, if you come to this place and are so adamant you've retired and you're slowly getting yourself back into this lifestyle, even though you're trying to help it, why don't you just up sticks and be like, fuck this, I can't be bothered to deal with these cowboys?
Because it's home, but also because, like, does he seem like the kind of guy that leaves because of someone else?
No, that's true.
God damn. You're gonna bleed. You got a fight coming today.
So things are getting more and more heated, and finally Wyatt Earp's just like, fuck it, and he joins with them, and they show up to confiscate their weapons outside the OK Corral. So we all know what's coming.
Yeah, we all know. Finally, I'm rubbing my hands together. This is going to be a shootout.
So what do you think of the shootout?
Do you know what? In the build-up was long, as we discussed earlier, but when it did actually get to it, I thought it was quite impressive. If I compare it to other Westerns, let's compare it to other Westerns, because I like each Western I do, I kind of compare the actual set pieces and the shootouts. Like, the first one that springs to mind to compare it to is the Wild Bunch, right at the end, which is possibly the most famous shootout out of all Westerns. It's very unrealistic. It's just carnage for carnage's sake, which makes it good. What I liked about this film, it was kind of like, I'm not going to say gritty, but it was kind of like realism to it, which I enjoyed. Yeah.
Total realism. And you even get a sense of that where Wyatt Earp still wants it to be avoided. They haven't definitely going for a shootout. They're going to confiscate the weapons. But he kind of knows he knows it most likely it's going to happen. And the way Kurt Russell delivers the line of, oh my God, just before the shooting starts, it felt so palpable. You felt like, that is the holy shit moment before guns is going to start firing.
Oh my God.
Yeah, what I liked about these characters, in like real life as well, like the most what I liked about them is they never like, even though they knew they could win most fights, they always tried to avoid it. And it's like in real life, you know, when you like see like video clips of fights, where it'll be like a guy just minding his own business and the other guy is starting on them, and then that guy ends up to be like a black belt. Do you remember that video? That guy just standing there and the guy, yeah.
Old days of YouTube. That was.
And like he's with his girlfriend and he just starts battering him, and like the guy's filming out the window. It's like. It's always the guys that try to avoid it who are the actual real hardest people.
Well, sometimes, a lot of the time, it's the hard guy that starts the fight as well, which is someone you really want to avoid.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the shootout is fantastic. And it's funny you were saying earlier about how Wyatt Earp went to his grave never having a scrape on him, because he was the only person to come out completely unscathed in the shootout as well. Yeah. You had Tom and Frank McLaury and Billy Clayton all dying.
Yeah.
Virgil was wounded. Morgan gets shot. But again... Wyatt Earp came out completely unscathed.
I got you now, you son of a bitch.
You're Daisy if you do.
So Josephine is with her lover, the sheriff, and kind of like local rich guy. And he's become aware that, she's got eyes for Wyatt Earp, and he's becoming quite jealous. That tips him over the edge to decide to side with the cowboys. Because, he's got to side with one side or the other, and he thinks they're the winning hand. So he helps coordinate with the cowboys to try and take out all of the Earp brothers and Doc Holiday.
Now after tonight, there'll be one man in charge of Tombstone. You'll be happy to know him. Bet on it.
Josephine goes over to warn Wyatt Earp and the others, but only the wives are there. And then the man with a shotgun bursts in, starts shooting up the place. Virgil, his older brother, gets shot in the arm, and he never has the use of that arm again. It's not his shooting arm. Meanwhile, Bill Paxton, unaware, is over in the gambling hall playing pool. And just as the thunder goes off again, a gunshot comes through the window.
Yeah, kills poor Bill Paxton.
Kills Bill Paxton. And he's perfect casting for this role. There's sometimes, you have your main actors, and then you have other moments where certain roles might be to release the pressure or be the comic relief. His role in this is to be Bill Paxton. Everyone loves Bill Paxton. Yeah. And the fact that Bill Paxton dies in this moment, which is what really makes things go over the edge.
Remember what I said about seeing a light when you're dying?
Yeah.
It ain't true. I can't see a damn thing.
Even if you didn't resonate with Wyatt Earp and Doc Holiday up till now, you are 100% on their side, and you want the revenge as much as they do to go after and take down all the cowboys for killing Bill Paxton.
Yeah, I think it's because they've done it in such a snaky way as well. Like it wasn't like a fair shootout even. It's just like,
it was bullshit.
They ambushed them when they were just like off guard, which pissed me off even more.
Hey, Matty, where's Wyatt?
Right behind you, Stillwell.
They went on the hunt from this point onwards. They were going after every one of the cowboy gang that they could find.
Yeah, I guess when it's come to this point, Declan, both sides have suffered casualties. So this is where it becomes the real macho thing of like, you've killed our guys, we've killed yours. Now we're going to fucking try and kill each other to the full level. Like,
you try and avoid war, but once it started, you got to commit.
Yeah, because before this, it was all very like, not a slow burn build up, but as you said, with the guerrillas beating their chests when they're sizing each other out. And this is where I was really like, now we fucking
it's
go.
Unavoidable.
Because they're going to like, they actively go and hunt the cowboys down. So they burst into a barber shop, like shoot them up. They burst into a brothel. Like
chase them down,
shoot someone. And I think Kurt Russell has one of my favourite lines in the film.
You tell him I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
From here, it goes full speed ahead. Really
does.
And
it's the pace quickens up, and it becomes just basically an extended, almost montage of them taking the gang members out, hunting them down in different locations, like you said. We get one of the big final showdowns where they come across most of the cowboy gang at a river, and they're kind of shooting from either side of the river, and I think they actually get ambushed by the cowboys. You were saying it's kind of an odd scene, the way they're cornered, they're thinking, what can we do? And Wyatt essentially just grabs his gun, runs out into the middle of the river, basically, where he could be easily shot.
They're all surrounded, and the cowboys are kind of taunting them, like, you're in the middle because there's guys behind you, there's guys in front. And Doc Holiday, I think he goes to like get up, because he's at this point, I guess, doesn't care about dying because he's dying anyway, as we said. And then Wyatt Earp kind of just runs, and Doc Holiday's like, no. And then he kind of like gets into a lake and just starts killing loads of people.
So he lures them out, the guy runs out, and then just kind of forgets to shoot, or forgets how to shoot. He just keeps going, no. Wyatt Earp keeps yelling no, and then he shoots him in the chest.
And let me get back to the wading into the lake bit. I thought it was very sensationalised. I was like, right, he's running into deep water in it, and if the water gets into his gun or any of his guns, it's not going to work anymore. So why would you go into the water? But apparently it happened in real life.
It was too odd
to not happen,
and too out there to not have been based on real life. I didn't know that, but I thought that has to be real. Because without the amount of effort they go to be inaccurate, they wouldn't throw that all away for a big, heroic, bizarre end scene.
No, this is one of my sticking points with the film. I think you touched on it. It's just very bizarre. Like, the amount of build-up we have between Wyatt Earp and I wanted a proper shootout with the main protagonist from the cowboy gangs. They've been going at each other's throats for like an hour of the film, and as you said, it's such a damp squib, because I don't know if his gun jams or something. It's just very strange, and it let it down a bit, I thought.
Fair enough. It was odd, I suppose, in terms of like directing and letting the audience know what is happening. Maybe it wasn't 100% clear, but again, if you come to this movie for those sort of action moments,
I guess
that's not what it's about. Like, the climax is more about the relationship between Wyatt Earp and Doc Holiday, rather than this moment.
Yeah, I guess so.
And it's kind of true to real life as well, because the violence it spends a lot of time on the relationship moments, and the violent scenes are very short-lived. And that's what real life is like. Like, the most famous shootout of all time was done in 31 seconds. It's quick. Like, violence is these tiny snippets that you really remember, we really think a lot about, but in real life it's just fractions of a second a lot of the time. So they know nearby there's a local rancher called Henry Hooker, played by Charlton Heston. It was great to see him come out for a little cameo.
Yeah.
So they stay there for a couple of days. He sees Josephine again. They have a little, romance, whatever's going on. And while this is happening, Doc Holiday starts to become really ill.
Yeah.
He's kind of nearly on the verge of dying. And Johnny Ringo and the last of the guys have decided they called him out for a local shootout.
He wants a straight-up fight, just you and him. Settle this thing once and for all.
You tell him I'll be there!
Are you crazy?
I'll be there!
Wyatt Earp leaves Doc Holiday sick in bed, and he goes off. He's going to go confront the guy, and he's going by himself. But while he's gone, Doc Holiday sneaks out of bed and goes and sneaks up on Johnny Ringo. And it's such a great line of dialogue when he sees him.
Why, Johnny Ringo, you look like somebody just walked over your grave.
Yeah.
Perfect, because it's not only like you look scared as shit, but it's foreshadowing to him you're going to be dead soon.
See, I like this scene, but again, it was a bit surreal, because he kind of like draws his gun and Doc Holiday like spins his around and shoots him in the head. But when he does shoot him in the head, he kind of like ambles around for like 5 minutes before he dies.
Well, again, this was one of the moments where there was witnesses.
Yeah.
And there was real, reliable historical accounts. And supposedly his line, "You'll be a daisy if you do," was a real line that was reported that he said. He supposedly did pull out his gun like that and shoot him. And that was a fairly accurate representation of how long it took the guy, Johnny Ringo, to die.
Oh, really?
Before he fell down. Wyatt Earp shows up and he's shocked to see him, and he says, guess I wasn't as sick as I thought I was.
Yeah, that was a cool line as well.
It goes for accuracy to the point where it's not interested in having the biggest shootout, the last shootout. It plays it all as it happened. I didn't really care about that bit as much as seeing that final scene between Doc Holiday and Wyatt Earp, when he's sitting in bed and he's accepting the fact that he's going to die, and he's helping Wyatt Earp accept the fact that he's going to die. Yeah,
so the film really goes now. We've had the set pieces to kind of just concluding what they go to Tombstone to have a normal life, but now they've actually got rid of all the gangs. They can actually live out the rest of their life as normal people. So it kind of nicely wraps it up for me.
But Doc Holiday says to him, there's no such thing as normal life. It's just life, and you've got to live it.
Yeah.
And it's a lovely moment where he gives him the book that he wrote about him called My Friend Doc. But this is one of the few moments that actually didn't happen in real life. There was no book. There was a lot of rumours that he wrote a book about him and gave it to him before his death, but no real reliable account of any such book actually ever existing.
And then it's so Hollywood, because he's like, "If you love me, leave me now," and then like in his southern drawl accent, and then kind of you see Wyatt's like look at him and then go off, and it's such the classic Hollywood. As soon as he leaves, he just goes, "Oh, this life," like just dies instantly. Like no one would like die like 1 second later. Brilliant. Do you know what I mean? But it was a very touching. It was a very well acted scene between them. Yeah. So Wyatt Earp, on conclusion of all the events of the film, he actually became an advisor to Hollywood on westerns, because obviously, what better advisor? Yeah. He's lived it. Do you know what I mean? And he was famous. And John Wayne, this has never been substantiated, by the way. Like John Wayne did talk a lot of shit. he came out and said he met Wyatt Earp in real life and he based his famous John Wayne walk on him, which I think is pretty cool, even if it's untrue.
That's one of those things where I don't even want to Google to see if that is true or not. This is that modern sort of Western at its absolute best, in the same vein of your Unforgivens. The thing about the Old West is it was so brutal and life was so simple. Small towns where everyone knows each other. There's a weird sort of simple philosophy that comes along with them that rings true in the dialogue as well. People say these beautiful, elegant statements about life in, on the surface, really simple dialogue, simple lines. It's kind of the way country music, good country music, not like the cheesy shit, can say so much with saying so little. That's the beauty of these sort of films. You know, the Westerns of old, that's where the Western genre lived. That's where all its hallmarks existed. But when you get these modern, authentic, realistic Westerns like Tombstone, that have so much love behind it, historical accuracy, great production values, there's something beautiful about them. And as much as they have all the hallmarks of modern cinema, it brings you to like an older time in filmmaking. It reminds you more of your John Fords or, Kevin Costner making Dances with Wolves. There's something about it that feels classical in a lot of ways, even though it's, modern actors and modern production values. And it's, Tombstone is the perfect example of it.
I guess my love for Westerns came about because in the society we live now, everything is like so fast. Like fast food, fast everything, mobiles, constantly on the mobiles and all that. And the reason I got so into films was for an escape for a couple of hours from that, and specifically more the Western genre, because everything was so much more simple. Even though they lived in like such a rough and like death was all around the corner, the greatest heroes on Westerns, well, apart from like the man with no name who was going around for his own to get money, basically, they had like a very good moral standpoint about like, this is your hero and this is the bad guys, which I really loved. And Tombstone's another kind of great example of that. And I just thoroughly enjoyed it. For a 90s Western, the cast was brilliant. And I put it up there with Unforgiven as the best films from the 90s period, Western-wise.
Well. How the hell are you?
Wyatt, I am rolling.